Whether mistaken as a demon or a god, many stories have been told of the darkened blade. But few know his real name or the story of his fall. Aatrox was a mighty champion of his homeland and was gifted with the responsibility of an Ascended. These Ascended were seen as great celestial gods and powerful leaders. Aatrox was at the vanguard of every conflict and the most noble of the Ascended. When Aatrox encountered the Void, his armies were easily wiped out. Aatrox and a group of other Ascended gods sealed the largest Void Rift, but this came at a terrible cost. The Void corruption was too great, even for the noble Ascended warriors like Aatrox. This corruption gave Aatrox a want for power and leadership, but for a time, Aatrox was able to resist these whispers that were not his own. Eventually, the great empire Aatrox served fell, just as all empires must, and without a leader to protect or a war to fight, these Ascended warriors began to battle amongst one another, leaving death and destruction in their wake. These fallen Ascended were called a new name by the survivors of these bloody battles: the Darken. People began to see that these once great and powerful god warriors were now just as great of a threat as the Void once was. A handful of Ascended gods from another part of the world taught mortals how to seal away the Darken and help fight back their armies. Aatrox, always being ready for war, met them head-on, but realized it too late that they had been deceived. He was pulled into his sword that he had carried into battles countless times, and forever his immortal essence would be bound to it. His weapon was now his prison, sealing his consciousness and suffocating eternal darkness, robbing him of even the ability to die. For centuries he tried to escape this prison, but could never do so, until one day when a foolish mortal attempted to wield this ancient blade. Aatrox forced his will and a poor imitation of his old body onto the weapon's new wielder. This transformation killed the mortal almost instantly. Years passed, and Aatrox was able to do this to several other hosts. He became so proficient in this process, it was said he could take control of a mortal before they could finish a single breath. Aatrox was able to consume his victims and make himself stronger and larger while he was on the battlefield. Aatrox used his hosts to travel the land, aimlessly searching for a way he could free himself and regain his previous form. But the riddle of the blade proved unsolvable. In time, he came to realize he would never be free from it. Each time he took over another mortal's body, he felt as if it was mocking him, showing him a poor imitation of the noble god he once was. These feelings of rage, hatred, and betrayal consumed any good that might still have remained from his past, and he decided that if he could not be allowed to die or free himself, then he would bring oblivion to everyone. Aatrox forever marched toward his endless goal, bringing war and death wherever he goes, hoping that if he can pull all life into one final apocalyptic battle and everyone is slain, then maybe he too will cease to exist. Aatrox is the perfect example of why you should never judge a book by its cover. He was a hero to his people. He risked everything to save those he loved. He had the willpower to push back an otherworldly corruption for a time. For everything he did, he was repaid with betrayal of the very gods that were responsible for his creation, and he was robbed of his right to die. For the longest time, whenever I saw a picture of Aatrox, I would often find myself assuming he was just a demon, a force of evil without depth, but after reading his story, he has become one of my favorite characters of Riot Games. And when I first designed his stat block, I gave him a lot of demonic evil powers, and don't get me wrong, he is completely capable of them, but if you are thinking about putting Aatrox in your games, I would ask that you consider hinting at his depth and his fall from grace. Aatrox is a product of his circumstances, who is robbed of his decision. F. Scott Fitzgerald once said, "Show me a hero, and I'll write you a tragedy." Aatrox is known to be an unstoppable force once he appears on the battlefield. We gave him very high physical statistics and a reasonably high array of intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. Aatrox, being a godlike aspect, needs little argument as to why he might have 3 to 5 legendary resistances. In the game League of Legends, Aatrox has been shown to be capable of draining an opponent's life force and using it to make himself stronger. Because of this, I have allowed Aatrox to regain hit points equal to the first damage he deals on each of his turns, or with his legendary actions. In his video game adaptation, his healing could be reduced by a debuff called Grievous Wounds, so we gave players a way to stop his healing ability for a round if Aatrox takes fire or acid damage, much like a troll's regeneration. For his attacks, we have allowed Aatrox to swing his massive sword at enemies up to 3 times during his turn, dealing 4d6 plus 7 slashing damage per hit. In his game version, he is known to slam down on top of his foes as a way to disrupt or overpower them, so we have allowed Aatrox to slam down on an area and cause all creatures in front of him in a 15-foot cone to make a dexterity saving throw or take 46 damage and be knocked prone. Aatrox has 0 ranged attacks in his arsenal, so we have given him his shackle and pull ability from the game. Basically, Aatrox makes a ranged attack roll, forcing his target to dodge out of the way or be pulled 20 feet toward Aatrox. Lastly, for his actions, we have given Aatrox his ultimate ability, World Ender. Aatrox enters a bloodlusting rage for 1 minute and causes all creatures within 60 feet to make saving throws or become feared by Aatrox. During this rage, Aatrox can fly up to 50 feet per turn, deal extra damage with his attacks, gain magic resistance, and for each creature he slays while in this state, he can remain in this state for an additional 1 round. For his legendary actions, Aatrox can make 3 more sword attacks, move up to half of his movement, or use his Infernal Chains ability to pull his next victims into melee range. And with that, as simple as he may be, I think we've made one heck of a World Ender.
Until the final oblivion comes, we will go.